Cunard line stands today as a testament to a bygone era with a history spanning 185 years, with ships ranging from iconic and legendary to ships that have become synonymous with disaster. Well, these ships all have one thing in common. They're well known and they've changed the course of history for the Cunard line. However, one class of ships is often overshadowed, as without this class of ships we're looking at today, we probably wouldn't have the crazy people arguing that the Lusitania and the Mauretania are better than the Olympic class. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax and grab a snack as we take a look at the class of ships that gave rise to the Cunard line.
Do you recognise one of the grandest ships that ever carried the British flag?
It's great to be here for the opening of the Dudley Hippodrome.
A theatrical landmark could disappear if plans to demolish it go ahead.
Had a wonderful war record, sinking 2 enemy submarines and carrying thousands of troops in safety. They called her the Old Renown.
Picture this, it's 1839 and you're Samuel Cunard, and you've just been awarded the transatlantic steamship contract, so you decide to start your own shipping line. However, you look at your mighty fleet of one singular ship and you realise, I really need more ships. This is what happened to Cunard, and this would also lead Cunard to order a class of 6 brand new ships. The Britannia class was essentially going to be a smaller version of Brunel's SS Great Western, and was going to be powered by a Napier side lever steam engine, and would, unlike the similar looking Great Western, would all have paddle wheels. They, unlike many ships at that time, would also both have their sails. Their interiors would be nothing grand, and in fact, the namesake of this class, Britannia, would be described as a gigantic hearse by Charles Dickens. To confuse me and also to speed up construction, these ships were constructed by 3 different shipyards. These were Robert Duncan and Company, John and Charles Wood, and finally, Robert Steele and Company. The first of these ships is a familiar face, the Britannia. She was built by Robert Duncan and Company in Greenock, and she was ordered in 1839 and took just over a year to be built, as she set off on her maiden voyage on the 4th of July 1840, which she would complete in about 12 days and 4 hours. Then, on her return voyage back to Liverpool, she would break a record for completing the voyage in about 10 days. Nothing else of note would really occur until 1842, when the famous author Charles Dickens sailed aboard her. Like previously mentioned, he didn't think much of the ship, and probably spent most of the voyage wishing he was as dead as a doornail. I mean, I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade, as on his journey back he did not want more, as he took a sailing ship back. Anyways, enough Charles Dickens references, as in 1843, Boston would be hit with a snowstorm, freezing over the water near the Britannia's dock, leading to the cutting of an ice canal for the Britannia to be able to sail out of Boston. Then, in 1849, Britannia would be sold to the German Confederation, which would result in her being renamed to the SMS Barbarossa. She would be made the flagship of the German Confederation Navy, which is odd, as how often is it that a ship in one of these videos goes from being an ocean liner to the flagship of a country's navy. But anyways, for her new role she was given 9 guns. She'd even take part in the Battle of Heligoland. She'd serve under the German Confederation until 1852, when she'd be transferred over to Prussia and converted into a barrack ship. She'd serve in this role until 1880, when she would finally be decommissioned and sunk as a target ship. The second ship of the Britannia class was called the Acadia, and she was built by John Wood and Company. She'd be launched in April of 1840 and would set off on her maiden voyage 4 months later in August. During her time at the Cunard, she'd gained a reputation for speed, despite never being able to break the speed record. She'd also find herself stranded at Terschelling Island in March of 1849, though she'd thankfully be saved. Then, later that year, she would find herself sold to the German Navy alongside her sister, although she wouldn't be with them for long, as in 1852 the German Navy of the German Confederation would be dissolved, and she would be sold and reconverted into an ocean liner, renamed Germania, where she would prove successful and efficient. Wait, what's that? She took 24 days on her first voyage with her new owners? I see. Well, anyway, she'd be chartered for use as a troop ship during the Crimean War, which she'd survive. After her service, she would be sold to the British and later would be deployed to India during the Indian Rebellion. And this would prove to be her final deployment, as shortly afterwards, in 1858, she'd be scrapped in London. I couldn't find much on the Caledonia, but here we go. She was built by John Charles and Woods and was launched on May 13th, 1840. And like her sisters, didn't take long to be built, as she was completed in September of the same year. Her time with Cunard would be uneventful and brief, as in 1850 the Caledonia would find herself being sold to the Spanish Navy and renamed, oh god, I can't pronounce this. Here we go! Conde de Regalia? Well, if you don't like it, lump it. She would serve under the Spanish for 11 years before being retired and sold off for scrap in 1861. The Columbia was going to be built by Robert Steele and Company up in Greenock, Scotland, and was launched on the 14th of September 1840 before starting her career shortly after, on the 5th of January 1841. Her career would prove to be surprisingly eventful, as like the previously mentioned Acadia, the Columbia would have a reputation for speed, although unlike the previously mentioned Acadia, the Columbia would actually win the Blue Riband for both the eastbound and westbound routes. Unfortunately though, it wouldn't really matter, as on the 2nd of July 1843, the Columbia's career was cut short, as she was wrecked at Seal Island, Halifax, Nova Scotia, with no loss of life to my surprise. The Hibernia was built by Robert Steele and Company and would be launched on the 8th of September 1842, being completed shortly after, starting her career on the 19th of April 1843, as she departed on her maiden voyage, which would be relatively uneventful. In 1848, the Hibernia would make her first crossing to good old New York. Then, in 1850, the Hibernia would continue to follow the recurring trend started by her sisters of being sold to a country's navy. After being sold, she would serve as a transport ship for the Spanish Navy all the way up until 1868, when she would be decommissioned and sold for scrap. The final ship of the Britannia class would have a pretty interesting career, as to begin with, following the loss of the Columbia, Cunard would decide to order a replacement ship. This vessel would be called the Cambria, and she was going to be built by Robert Steele and Company. Her construction process would be uneventful, being launched on the 1st of August 1844, and on the 4th of January 1844, Cambria would depart on her maiden voyage, beginning a long career with the Cunard Line, during which she would win the Blue Riband for the fastest crossing, although in 1846 she would quite quickly come to a stop, as she was looking to set some ground rules. No, literally, as she was grounded at Cape Cod. Whoops. Thankfully though, she would be saved and would continue to serve under the Cunard Line without event until 1852, as it was decided that she would be sold off and replaced by the brand new Arabia. This, however, wouldn't come to fruition, as Cunard would sell off the Arabia's sister before completion, creating a need for Cambria. Then in 1853, Cunard would remove her mast. The following year of 1854 would be an eventful one for Cambria, as to begin with, she'd end up rescuing some of the survivors of the infamous Collins liner Arctic, and not too long after this, she would be requisitioned as a troop transport during the Crimean War. After her time as a troop ship, the Cambria would suffer a fate worse than death, being made to go to Boston! Thankfully though, for the Cambria, this would be temporary, as in 1856 she would be chartered by the Australian and European line, where she would do regular crossings between France and Malta. In 1860, the Cambria would be sold to the Royal Italian Navy, who would wind up being her final owners, as in 1875 she would be scrapped, bringing an end to the youngest ship, the Britannia class. The Britannia class was a vital part of Cunard's history, helping put them on the map and also playing a minor role during the short-lived Cunard-Collins line rivalry. And whilst these ships today don't have many depictions and are often overlooked by maritime historians, their importance to the history of ocean lines cannot be understated. They may not have looked great, and their interiors may not have been as glamorous as later ships, but they were the origins to Cunard, a line that is still around today. Anyways, thank you all for watching everyone, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and you wish to see more of my content, then please boop that like button and press the subscribe button, as this really helps my channel. And with that, I conclude this video. Thank you all for watching everyone. Goodbye!